Now, if you're preparing for a DevOps interview, you're in the right place. I'm going to give you the exact questions I asked when I'm hiring, candidates, and more importantly, why I asked each single question. Now, these are your Google style, brain teasers that you can just ask. What is Terraform? What is CI/CD? These are questions that actually expose whether you've actually worked on the piece of work or that certain tool. Right, let's get started. So first thing, someone told me I've done Kubernetes, I've got the CK, the CCAD, CKS. Cool, amazing. If I was to ask you, a pod is stuck in a crash loop backup, walk me through how you debug it. First thing, why I asked. Now, this question separates people who've actually used Kubernetes from those who just deployed, a pod, or they've completed the CCAD and the CK. It tests your actual knowledge of using the logs, using probes, events. Now, a good answer will look like this. The candidate would tell me I would describe the pod for events. I would check the container logs with kubectl logs. I'll check deployments, replica sets, the pods, what's happening inside all of them. I would look for the any bad configuration, config maps, environment variables. Are there any vars missing? Are there missing mounts, and so on? And maybe they'll even say how to fix the image, update configuration, or even tune those probes. That's what I want to see. On to the next one, Terraform. If I was to ask you, how will you structure Terraform for multiple environments? What's your strategy for state, state locking, managing Terraform state, using modules and secrets in Terraform? Now, why I ask this question is because this shows that they've done more than basic Terraform. I want to see best practices here and experience with using, work with big Terraform code bases, right? It's very important. Good answer here might be, I would want to use modules so I don't repeat my code. I'll separate dev, staging, prod with different remote states. I'll use Terragrunt. I'll use workspaces, right? Or even a good directory structure. All these things are very important. I'll use S3 with dynamo state locking. If you're even better, you can say I'll use S3 native locking, which is quite new. And if you're reading up and you know what's going on, you would know that is a new feature, which is really nice. I'll use, Terraform, TF vars properly. I'll use variable validation. Var validation is very important to know, and most don't even do it. I would make sure to keep my secrets in Vault using SOPs or inject into CI/CD properly and securely. Next thing, how would I test the skill of a candidate on Linux? I would ask them a very vague question to see how deep their knowledge and breadth of Linux is. I would say to them, you log into a server that's running really slow. What do you check first? Now, why I ask this, because this actually filters out DevOps engineers who can't use basic Linux tools. Now, I want to see some sort of muscle memory here, that they're well with the basic tools and they can go into more advanced concepts. Now, a good answer here might be, I'll use, for example, the htop command, the top command, IO stat command, the VM stat. I'll use df, du, all these commands, right? Very important. I want to check the disk memory, the CPU, the load average, if you know what that is, kudos to you, all these things, right? Now, networking stuff, I'll check netstat, see what ports are open, lsoft, general control, I'll check the logs and the syslog and so on. Bonus, even you can mention, are there any zombie processes, or are there any processes stuck in IO? As you can see, this shows the candidate is aware of, basic Linux and can actually debug problems if they face it. You join a team with a 25-minute pipeline. So your pipeline runs for 25 minutes, one run. How will you improve it? Now, this question, as you've guessed, it tests the candidate's, knowledge on real CI/CD, pipeline experience. So we see your understanding of, caching, or caching as you call it, parallelism, testing strategies, and so on. Now, a good answer will be to make sure your stages in parallel. Make sure in parallel so you save time. You want to cache your dependencies, Docker layers, your npm packages. All these things you want to make sure they cache, right? Make sure to even use pre-compiled assets, things have already been compiled in the past, or even try to use a remote cache, so you don't have to waste time building that that cache again, dependency, and so on. Make sure to separate build and test jobs, and last but not least, make sure to run only when there's a change or a condition. For example, I wouldn't run a whole pipeline run when my Docker file changes, right? I'll run that certain stage. How do I use conditions? And these are very important to understand. And last but not least, design for me a secure, scalable platform to deploy a web application. All used for networking, secrets, CD, and observability. Now, this question tests your architect knowledge and your hands-on, a bit of both, right? Now, it filters out the people who are just juniors or don't know their stuff, the people who can actually think high level but have worked in scenarios. This is more for senior type of question. Candidate will tell me what kind of computer I would use, how to save costs, right? Do I use VPC? Do I use public subnets, private subnets? Do I use EKS or ECS? And why? Do I use Fargate or managed nodes? Do I implement Argo CD? Is that overkill or is it needed? Do I use Vault for secrets? Do I use SOPs? Or what? How do I manage my secrets? For load balancers, what do I use? How do I manage my my certs as well? Do I use Cert Manager? Do I use ACM? Monitoring. How do I implement it? Do I use Prometheus? Do I use Grafana? Do I use Loki? And all these things, right? They're very deep question. And some, like quick fire questions I'll ask, for example, is what's the difference between a copy and an add in Docker file? What's the inner container, for example, Kubernetes, and what is NAT gateway and the internet gateway? What's the main difference? As you see where I'm going, these questions test your actual knowledge of, tech tools, right? Now, if you're interviewing soon, good luck to you and prep these well. Now, these are not actually trick questions. They're like, they're kind of questions, do you actually know what you're talking about, right? They're very good questions. And drop a comment with some of your killer questions, you've been asked, even ask others, and I'll hopefully reply to every single one. Thank you and all the best.